All right, let's go ahead and take the contents of this form right here and send it to our server. So first, let me go ahead and press submit. You can see that we have a JSON that has first name, last name, email, and gender. So let's now go ahead and switch to Java. And what we want to do is actually take this payload and then have an endpoint that can consume this so that we can do some processing. So go ahead and open up IntelliJ. And inside of the student controller, let's go ahead and create a new method. So let's go ahead and simply create a new method that accepts a student. So let's go ahead and simply say public and then void and then add new and then student. So inside of this method, we're going to accept a student. So let's go ahead and simply say student, and this will be a student. So for now, let's simply go ahead and simply say south, and let's actually print the actual student. So student there, and let's actually go ahead and open up the actual student because we are printing out student, and let's define a toString method right here. So right here, simply go ahead and press Control and then enter, and then toString, and then select all of these and then OK. And now we have a toString that we can simply use it when we print the actual student right here. Now let's go ahead and simply annotate this method right here with at and then post and then mapping. So this post mapping allows the client to issue a post request. So get requests is when you want to retrieve some content from your server. Post is when you want to add a new resource or content. In our case, we want to add a new student. And then we have put and delete, but I'm going to explain those later on. For now, all you need to do is simply add post mapping right here and then have a student. Now you see that we have this JSON object right here. So first name, last name, email, and gender. So when we send this JSON payload to our server, we need to tell this method right here that we will consume that from the request body. So let's go ahead and simply say at and then request and then body. So we're going to get this student from the request body. But we still have to do one more thing. So we get the actual payload from the request body, but now we need to take the actual JSON payload and then transform that into this student right here. So this student class that we can then use it. So currently there's nothing that allows us to take that JSON payload and then pretty much just instantiate a new object of this type right here, student. So the way that we do it is by using Jackson, and we simply use these annotations right here. So go ahead and simply use an annotation. So in the actual constructor, go ahead and say at and then JSON property, and then the name will actually be the same. So let's leave it as the same and do the same for the rest. So I'm going to copy this. First name, last name here, and then gender, or actually email, and finally gender. So if I expand this, so basically what we're saying here is that we will receive a JSON payload, and then I want you to map all the JSON properties that you get from the client to these ones right here. So student ID, first name, last name, email, and gender, so that you can have an instance of this class right here called student. And where you have the instance is inside of the student controller. So right here. So this simply says we want to get the student from the request body. But then once we receive it, we want to simply map the actual payload using these properties that you give us. And then we have access to this student right here. And then we are simply printing out student right here. So to see this in action, let's go ahead and use Postman. So go ahead and simply download Postman if you don't have. I already have Postman right here, so I'm going to open up. Just give it a second. And I've got a few things I was doing here, so just let me delete everything. So delete all. And now let's simply go ahead and issue a post request to our server. So in fact, let me go ahead and open up this tab right here so we can see the actual system.out.println. And if I open up Postman, so let's go ahead and simply say localhost column 8080 API, and then what we want is actually student. And for now, let's go ahead and issue a GET request. So send, and actually this doesn't work. So this is localhost 8080 API and then student. Oh, actually, sorry, students with an S. So send, and you can see that we get an array right here, right? So this is what you've seen before. Now let's go ahead and simply issue a post request. So with post request, let's go ahead and simply try and pass a student. So let me grab this student right here, and inside of the actual body, go ahead and simply change that to raw, and then instead of text, change that to JSON. So I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to send this from our React application. But first, I want to test this out so you see exactly what's going on. So let's go ahead and paste that. And remember that the actual student ID will be generated from the actual server, right? So the client will never pass this, but for now it's fine, right? We're just testing out things. So I just want you to see that whenever we send this object. So let me just put this aside. So actually, just let me open up the student. So you see these properties right here. So student ID. So basically they have to match right here. So basically we are taking, so student ID has to map to that one. First name maps to that one. Last name maps to that one. Email to this one here, email, and then gender to this one right here. So now let's go ahead and send this. So go ahead and simply press send. And you can see that the actual method post is not supported. And that's because I need to restart my server. So let's go ahead and restart the server to pick up the changes. There we go. Now let me go ahead and simply open up Postman again. And then let's send. And there we go. So you have a 200 right here. But now if you check in the actual console, you can see that right here we have a student, which is awesome. So we managed to send a JSON payload from the client to our server. And you can see the details right here. So student ID, first name, last name, email, and gender. So in fact, we don't even need to send the actual student ID. So if we don't include by default, that will be null. So if I send, you can see that the student ID right here is null. So there we go. If you have any questions or if you had troubles getting this far, go ahead and drop me a message and I'll be more than happy to assist. Next, let's go ahead and write the client code to send this JSON payload right here to our server.